Welcome to the programme, and it's a busy one today. Shortly we'll be crossing over to the Philippines to get the latest on what could be the strongest typhoon in history, which is going to hit land. Millions of people have taken refuge and we're hoping to speak to some of them. Plus, it's been one of the most viewed stories online. Toronto Mayor Rob Ford, who admitted smoking crack cocaine, has now apologised for a video where he makes threats to kill. So should Rob Ford be allowed to keep his job? Plus, we'll hear from Indians about their country's first mission to Mars. Wherever you're watching, you can get involved. Here are the different ways to do it.
Talking about it. Top priority.
I experience.
It's just what?
This is chaos.
People are going to want to know.
Let's just say something.
Well, it's good to have you with us. Now, it's worth saying that World Have Your Say is now on WhatsApp, so you can send your video comments to us. We've posted our number on Twitter and on Facebook, so if you use WhatsApp, you can find it there, save the number on your phone and get in touch. Of course, you can always go to worldhaveyoursay.com to upload your videos there. Now, throughout the day, lots of people have been getting in touch with us from the Philippines, where this typhoon has hit. We've received these videos from people in the affected areas in Cebu City, in Legazpi City and in San Jose. This first one is from Marco Paulo in Cebu City. He told us he took this video from his window, from his room. It was around 11 a.m. local time, and he did it when he saw those banana trees there falling down. As you can see, it's when the storm is just starting to pick up. Randall sent us this second video from Legazpi. He said the area is prone to storms and there has been significant structural damage. And you see there people still out and about.
I'm here in Legazpi City in the Bicol region, where it's slightly just north of Visayas where the storm directly hit. But even though this city wasn't in the direct path of the storm, it still had a significant impact. Legazpi City is a coastal city facing the Pacific Ocean and was prone to storm surges. And right now the storm has passed and I was able to check out a few areas, and we did have some damages. Most of it I've seen were near the coast, where waves were pounding at the boulevard, and some of the rocks that were cemented on the walkway have been taken out, and we also saw some structural damages in some of the buildings, particularly in one mall, wherein the skin of it was just blown away by the wind.
And that's Randall who sent us that video from Legazpi. We've also had this sent in from Ed, who is in Lapa City in Cebu.
I'm currently here in Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu. Since this morning, 10 a.m., we don't have any electricity and as well as water supply. And currently, right now, we are experiencing moderate rain shower, and also the wind is not that strong since this morning.
And that was Ed. And we also got this from May, who sent this through to us in Manila.
I'm actually in Cebu right now, and the weather is calmer. We're just experiencing drizzles, and there are no strong winds compared to this morning's. That was horrible. The strong winds and then the heavy downpour was horrible. I experienced and witnessed it in my own eyes. As of now, I just arrived from downtown just to check the extent of damage. There are some areas are like really dark because power outage is still experienced, but there are some areas also are like electricity is already back. We are just so worried about our colleagues in in Eastern Visayas and Western Visayas, because we've been hearing reports or text messages earlier. They're in evacuation centers, and now we don't have any access to them anymore.
And that was May in Manila. As you can imagine, getting Skype lines through to people in the affected areas is particularly challenging at the moment, but we'll continue to do that throughout the programme and bring any guests to you that we can. But first, let's cross over to Cebu City. I'm pleased to say that Eric joins us on the line now from that area. Eric, thank you for taking the time to speak to us on World Have Your Say. Tell us what the conditions are like there right now.
Yes, hello, good evening. Good evening from my time. Right now, from where am I? The weather seems to be normal. We do have some humidity coming back in. No more rain, no more strong winds, but we are still experiencing a citywide power outage. And at the moment, I'm still running on backup batteries and battery-operated LED lights. So that's the condition so far from where I am.
You seem in good spirits, Eric. Many people, I can imagine, would think this is absolutely terrifying. How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, so for fortunately for me, I'm located in up high level ground, so based and surrounded with actually there's a big construction building under construction beside me. So when the wind blew this morning, it didn't particularly give us a lot of bad experiences, except for the strong breeze coming up from the different other side. So I think instead of in this when the wind came in this morning, most of the debris that were coming that we can see from our windows or from the debris coming from the building behind us. So fortunately for us, the wind didn't really struck our infrastructure, didn't struck us hard. So what happened was that we didn't really felt that the wind was very strong. But around a few hours, I did went outside and I went to the capital site. I went to a few blocks away from my spot. I really did saw a lot of damages, trees falling down. We have some dilapidated shanties on the street side, and we have some displaced street post sign and some wirings taken out from the post, and a lot of uh, tree trunks and leaves all over the streets.
Well, Eric, do stay with us because I want to pull up this video which we've been sent from Ernesto in Roxas City. If you have a look at this, it's some footage which he's taken out of his window.
Wow! Heavy!
You see incredibly strong winds there. And Eric, I guess this is what you were describing to us, the sheer scale of these winds. Very difficult to imagine. We hear that there've been winds up to 199 miles an hour. Did you ever consider leaving your home and going somewhere else to get safety?
Well, actually, I'm in the office when I was in. I'm still at the office right now, and earlier this morning and yesterday, we've been receiving a lot of evacuation requests from the government asking people with living in lightweight shelters to evacuate in higher grounds and move into evacuation centers. And as for us, this place was already safe for us, but my family actually stayed here this morning just to make sure our house, if our house ever give in to the weather, there won't be any casualties.
And for many people watching around the world, they will appreciate that your country gets hit by typhoons on a reasonably regular basis. Are there any preparations that you personally make or your friends and your family make when you are living with these kind of threats on such a regular basis?
On a regular basis, for if there are strong typhoons coming in, we usually pack in some canned goods, and then we charge our batteries. And most of the time we stay at home. So sometimes if friends are not sure if their house can support them, or if their house may give in, they might ask you like if they can stay in your place. But most of the time, the government will ask you to have to be sent to evacuation centers. And as a matter of fact, yesterday we have patrols, police patrols, evacuation centers. Patrol cars from the government asking people to evacuate to evacuation centers, and we have also patrol cars moving the area earlier before the storm surge around 11 in the morning.
Well, let's pull up this video, which we've also received. As you can appreciate, so many coming into us at World Have Your Say today. Nico in Buckalod said this footage of how the typhoon has affected his area. You see the driving rain there as well as the winds. Eric, I wonder, as you sit there now in the area that is still affected in Cebu, when will you feel safe to go outside? When you look out of the window now, what are the conditions like?
Well, right now, technically, it's safe to go outside, but because of the power outage, it's not really recommended that you can go outside because the street lamps are really shut down, and you might know what hit you because there are motorbikes running in and out. Because there's not too much traffic activity on the streets, some motorbikes are running really fast. Some cars are also moving in and out, but there's only a few cars moving in and out as well. So probably it will be safer tomorrow, but not tonight.
And presumably in the morning it will become a bit clearer. At the moment we're understanding that 3 people have died, a few people injured. I guess it's impossible in the darkness where you are right now to really assess the true impact on your area.
Yes, as far as where I've been within today, I haven't seen that much damage, but getting feeds from my social network, I can see that there are a lot of substantial damage from different areas just within this island. Not to mention that there are other islands affected by this typhoon, and I think that to the greater extent from the western islands, the first island where the typhoon made a landfall, I think there was so much damage. I think it was in Tacloban and Ormoc, and Cebu is in the central part of the Philippines, so I'm not sure how much damage the typhoon had caused us, because even to this moment, there's limited access to news and internet and things like that can give us information about this typhoon.
Well, wherever you're watching around the world, if you want to get in touch with us, you can use the hashtag on Twitter, WHYS. You can head to Facebook, facebook.com/World Have Your Say. Let's bring in another guest who joins us now. Hesed Kazera is a student in Surigao City in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us once again, very late at night where you are. Just give us an idea of the situation where you are.
Oh, well, last evening there was this strong gusty winds. It was very strong that it terrifies us actually. Last 3 in the morning, the storm, the gusty winds got very strong, and it literally tears off the roofs of our neighbors. You know? And yes, it was very terrifying. I've never seen and experienced that kind of storm in my whole life, I guess, as far as I can remember.
It's interesting you say that. As I was saying to Eric, obviously your part of the world is very prone to typhoons, but it is thought this could be the strongest storm ever to hit land, and you really did feel that difference in the storm.
Yeah, of course. Philippines is a typhoon-prone country, and we're kind of used to it, but this one is very different. I mean, this is really scary. I even think could this be the end of the earth, you know, that kind of thing. That's very difficult for me, especially to see people evacuated in the church, because I live in the church. This is a parsonage, and the church received evacuees. There were 11 of them, because the church was drafted as one of the safe place for these people, local people here in Surigao City, to take shelter. Yeah, there were really a lot of children in the church. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. You could see, I could hear the wind whistle, the whistling in the air. It's very frightening. But for now, it's already okay. But that was different. I've never experienced that kind of storm, that kind of typhoon, that big. You know, could you see that? Just to see it in the internet, that kind of typhoon, it's even covering the whole Mindanao where I am in.
Well, I want to pull up this video. Do stay with us, but I want to pull up this video. Michelle in Cebu sent us this footage. This is video from the Crown Garden Hotel in Cebu City. A brave taxi driver out there on the roads. Well, we're going to return to talking about the Philippines a little bit later on in the programme, but shortly we will be speaking about the Toronto mayor who's been in so much trouble this week, Rob Ford. Do stay with us. Much more to come on World Have Your Say.
No, I talking about it. Let me say something. No, I talking about it. Let me say something.
Welcome back to World Have Your Say. I'm Chloe Tilley. Thanks for your company. We're going to turn our attention to Rob Ford, the Toronto mayor who's had so many problems this week, initially having to apologise after it emerged there was a video circulating showing him smoking crack cocaine. He said he was profusely sorry for that. Now it appears another video has emerged. You may well have seen it online. It's one of the most viewed videos online at the moment, where he seems to be making threats to kill somebody. Not clear who it is. He's gone on to say he was extremely inebriated. So it'll be interesting to see how people view that. I want to introduce you to three guests who join us now to discuss this. Madeline Ashby is a writer in Toronto. Jeff Semple is a journalist at CBC in London. And Anthony Furry is a columnist at Sun Media in Toronto. Anthony, first of all, we saw his ratings rise after the evidence of the crack cocaine smoking. But do you think that's likely to happen now after this latest video's emerged?
I actually think that this video is less scandalous for him than previous videos and gaffes. The thing you have to remember with Rob Ford that international viewers might not be aware of, in many ways he's a rejection of the standard political class. People have accepted him warts and all. And this drunken tirade video, it's obviously not a good thing. Nobody wants to be doing this or be in this position, but it's taken at his home or at someone's home. It's unclear whether it's alcohol or something else that's the issue. And this actually is a little closer to being a regular people problem. And that's the sort of stuff that the previous gaffes he's done, videos of him giving people the middle finger while on the road or using his cell phone while driving, that sort of stuff. People have seen those and go, well, maybe I don't do that, but at least my crazy uncle does or my brother does, so I empathize a bit. So people have got to watch it if they're trying to snag him and do a gotcha moment with him on this, because this could end up benefiting him.
It's interesting you say this is a regular person's problem. I can see Madeline Ashby shaking her head. I don't know how many of you get drunk on a Friday night and threaten to kill people, but Madeline, what's your take on this?
I think that if this is a regular person problem for Anthony, he needs to start hanging out with different people. I think that this shouldn't be considered a regular people problem for a man whose wife went to the hospital in 2008, shortly before dropping assault charges on him. I think that it's incredibly scary. The people that I was speaking to yesterday over social media in person were terrified of what they saw. And my mother called me saying, what is going on over there? My mother called me from Seattle saying, you know, what's going on over there? Is this a guy that people should be afraid of? And I said, well, you know what, given how he's treated journalists and other people in the past, yeah, he is, unfortunately, sadly.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think I'd just jump in there and say by regular people problem, I clearly don't mean everybody is doing this, but at the end of the day, the thing that Rob Ford symbolizes is people have been tired of the perma-smile politician who says, I'm going to solve all your problems, here's the magic beans. In the end, the debt just goes up. They find there's more laws, regulations, levies, and fees on the books. And they see this guy here who's not an answer to all those problems, because he clearly does not have finesse. It's clear to anybody.
Well,
but he's sort of a placeholder
until the prime example comes in. When he creates so many more of them.
I don't think what actual problems has he actually created, Madeline? I think that's not a fair statement. I've tried to contrast the fact that you have mayors like Silvio Berlusconi, potential mayors like Anthony Weiner, Rob Ford, who are a personal mess. And it's a terrible thing, and nobody endorses the actual stuff they're doing. They have done no tangible damage to their actual communities, at least not in regards to those particular scandals. When you compare to other politicians who might have a squeaky clean personal life, but end up doing, billion-dollar boondoggles or get taken away and put in the clink for 28 years for fraud and bribery charges, like Kwame Kilpatrick in Detroit. These tangibly hurt people. The idea that people should be afraid for their lives in Toronto because Rob Ford is walking the streets is just nonsense.
Well, it's nonsense now that he has a driver. Before that, I think, yeah, you had reasonable reason to, it was reasonable to assume that you might be in danger simply from being on the road with him. I think
in
that
the same way that
Anthony
we're in
Weiner
danger
never
when
had an
anybody who's
opportunity
text
to make the
messaging on
kind
the
of
street.
mistakes that you're talking about, but it's, I suppose, reasonable to bring him up. I think that Rob Ford has made mistakes. He's done a very good job of appealing to his base, which are the suburbs of Toronto that formed his electorate. I think that for the people
Madeline, he has a
who, I think
44%
that the
approval
people
rating,
who
though.
did
That's
not
not
vote for
a
him,
base.
the
Anthony and
wards
Madeline, I hope you'll
downtown
forgive
in
me
old,
for jumping in
old
at this
city
point, because I want to introduce you both to Jeff Semple, who's sitting patiently waiting to join our conversation. Jeff, do you think, as Madeline says, that Rob Ford is someone to be afraid of?
No, I don't. And I think that, to Anthony's point, I think that Rob Ford's track record at Toronto City Hall, while it has certainly been controversial, hasn't necessarily been indicative of a mayor that's out of control, certainly. And any issues that he may have, and certainly seems to have on his personal life, don't appear to have sort of full-blown infiltrated his professional life. I think that, and I think to a point we've heard already, as shocking as these videos and these allegations are to many people internationally, I would argue they're not all that surprising to people in Toronto who are used to hearing stories about their mayors showing up intoxicated at public events.
Down the road
Madeline,
to ruin.
unfortunately, if you could start that point again, because we were just listening to Jeff. Do come in.
Sorry?
We weren't listening to that last point. Jeff was just finishing making his point, so do come in and start again.
Oh, okay, sure. I think that Rob Ford is actively destructive to the city of Toronto. This is a guy who said that that cyclists who pulled bike lanes from our city, and then said that cyclists who die on the road due to negligent drivers had it coming. And this is a guy who himself has been a negligent driver. I think that this is a guy who cut social programs for people with substance abuse problems while himself having substance abuse problems. I think that this is a guy who has done everything he can to punish the wards downtown that didn't vote for him. And I think this is an individual who is under criminal investigation and has the opportunity to fund the Toronto Police Services. He's
Madeline,
funding.
let me jump in. I wonder, Jeff, do you think this is actually a man who just needs help? He's admitted himself he has a drink problem.
I do, and I think there is a distinction, having covered City Hall and Mayor Ford for the last 3 years. I think there is a distinction between Mayor Ford and perhaps, you could argue, like Madeline has, that he's a bad driver. He's obviously passed a lot of policies that certainly many people, her included, aren't happy with. He's a very polarizing mayor, but I don't necessarily see yet that his personal issues have become a problem at City Hall that make him in any way a destructive mayor. I think, though, the concern, and it's a relevant one, is whether the mayor is in fact a ticking time bomb in that regard, whether someone who clearly has a lot of personal issues, many of which include these illegal substances, whether someone like that can run the largest city in Canada.
It's quite funny because, as you said, ticking time bomb, both Madeline and Anthony both nodded, and I'm sure this is something we're going to return to time and time again. We're going to leave it now, this edition of World Have Your Say, but do stay with us because there's plenty more to talk about. Hello, I'm Chloe Tilley. We're returning to the Philippines, hopefully connecting with more people who've been affected by that typhoon. And also we're going to be crossing over to a BBC weather expert to answer all of your questions. Welcome back to World Have Your Say.
Talking about it.
My experience.
This is chaos. People are going to want to know. Let's just say something.
Welcome back to the programme. Well, we're talking about the Philippines. The hashtags which have been trending globally on Twitter throughout the day are Pray for the Philippines and Haiyan, of course, the name of the typhoon. It's the 25th typhoon to hit the country this year, and so many questions have been coming into us here at World Have You Say that we've invited BBC Weather's Jay Wynn to join us to answer some of those questions. Jay, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We'll start straight away with a question that's come in from Inuju in Uganda on Facebook, asking at what speed was the storm moving and under what category is it?
Well, when it crossed the Philippines, it was
moving at around about 40 kilometers an hour, moving from east to west, as you can see quite clearly here. And in terms of its category, well, it was an extremely powerful storm. It's classed as a violent storm. It would be equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic. At the moment, the wind's gusts on the northern edge of the eye are gusting to around about 250 kilometers an hour. It's weakened off a little bit. To the south of that, well, the gusts are still pretty strong at around about 160 kilometers an hour. So it is a very, very powerful storm, one of the most powerful to make landfall that we have ever seen.
Well, ACOT in southern Sudan has posted at facebook.com/World Have Your Say, saying, why do you think typhoons are always targeting the Philippines? Obviously, we've heard this is a typhoon-prone area, but why is that?
Well, the Western Pacific is a breeding ground for typhoons. This satellite sequence takes you back about 5 days, and this was a tropical depression or a tropical storm which crossed the Philippines, made its way towards Vietnam, and now this is a Typhoon Haiyan, and as you can see, it's on a very similar path to that previous tropical storm. They breed out there in the Western Pacific because the waters are so warm, 26 degrees or more is what you need for tropical storms to develop, and once they become a tropical storm, they may well develop further into typhoons, which is what we're seeing at the moment. And we also need very light winds through the atmosphere, which means that the whole storm can grow from a cluster of thunderstorms. So it's a breeding ground, and it happens every year. The Philippines get hit by something like 20-plus tropical storms every year, of which at least 3, 4, maybe 7 turn into typhoons. This year, no exception. In fact, this year has been quite active, 24 storms in total so far. That includes a few typhoons. But just in terms of the most active year ever, 1964, we saw 39 tropical storms in this region, and I think about 7 of those turned into typhoons. So it happens pretty much every year.
Well, Nana in Accra says, how severe is this typhoon? You've mentioned yourself this is one of the largest to hit land, but also Nana asking, can this typhoon happen in other parts of the world?
Well, yes, it is extremely powerful. When it made landfall in the Philippines, it really was at its peak. We saw some incredible gusts of wind up to around about 378 kilometers an hour, and with winds of that strength, well, widespread destruction. And now it is on its way towards Vietnam. So yes, it can and it will affect other countries. But that's not unusual because these typhoons can, in fact, affect Japan as well, parts of China. So it's not unusual for these to affect many countries before they die out.
And one final question here from Kefa in Kisumu in Ghana. What's the difference between a typhoon and a hurricane?
Not much, really. They're exactly the same thing. They grow in the same They grow in the same fashion. They are exactly the same, to be honest. It's just a matter of where they form, which is how they are named. Typhoons occur in the Pacific region, hurricanes occur in North America, and cyclones occur in India and in Australasia. And indeed, in the northwest of Australasia, that's where we've seen the most powerful cyclone, typhoon, hurricane. That's where we saw the strongest gust ever, and that gust was in excess of 400 kilometers an hour. So they're all the same. It's just a matter of where they form, and that's how they get their name.
Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate that. I learnt lots, so I'm hoping you did too. That was really interesting. Jay Wynn from the BBC Weather Centre. Well, let's pull up this video now from Shalina, who sent it from the Philippines.
Hello, my name is Shalina Guaduri, and I work for an international volunteering sending organization. I'm based out in Washington, D.C., and I have been in the Philippines for 2 weeks. Over the past few days, I've been working in the area of Samar, close to the eastern province of Samar. And I was residing in Tacloban, one of the cities in which landfall was made. The knowledge of the intensity, the intensity of this cyclone did not actually come to knowledge right away to me or others, but slowly everyone started hearing that this was going to be a cyclone of like no other, and we even had locals in the surrounding areas who were packing up the hotel I was staying at, just talking to the people over there that worked there. They themselves were actually quite worried and were making arrangements to have them and their families also to leave quite quickly. The foreigners, once I got to the airport, I was told I needed to also leave the country, leave the city. And I tried to get a flight out in the morning, and that wasn't possible, and I took a 1:30 flight out, and just being at the airport, you could see considerable amount of foreigners leaving, locals leaving in droves as well too.
That was Shalina, who sent us that video from Washington, D.C. She has recently returned from the Philippines. As you know, so many people getting in touch with us. They've been uploading their videos at worldhaveyourSay.com. You can do that as well. We've got more guests who can speak to us now about that situation. As you can imagine, Skype lines through to the Philippines are quite challenging at the moment. But we can cross now, I'm pleased to say, to Karin van der Hoor, who is head of Plan International Charity. Karin, just bring us right up to date with the work that you're doing and what you're seeing on the ground.
What we're seeing is a major devastation. We're seeing a typhoon that we've never seen before, a diameter of more than 600 kilometers. And we're seeing people who have lost their houses, their livelihoods, their schools, their infrastructure. So we're seeing major, major damage.
How difficult is it for you as a charity to get out and reach the people who really probably do need most help at the moment?
Well, we are a little bit at an advantage because we have offices in the path of the typhoon. So Plan Philippines is actually very well prepared. We have also pre-positioned emergency relief goods. So it's relatively easy for us. But of course, we have the physical barriers of blocked roads, just like everybody else. But our teams have already been going out this afternoon, right after the typhoon passed. And we'll be doing more assessments from tomorrow onwards.
Well, Karin van der Hoor, head of Plan International Charity, thank you for joining us here on World Have Your Say. Lots more to talk about on the Philippines. If you join me on BBC World Service Radio 18 GMT, we'll be talking more about that and bringing you right up to date with all of the events there. But let's return now to Toronto, the situation with Rob Ford, the calls for some people saying that he should in fact resign after this latest video emerged of him threatening to kill people. He says he was very drunk when he did it and he has apologised profusely. Well, let's speak now to Jordan Samuel, who's a student in Toronto. Jordan, do you understand the situation that the mayor is in? He says he's got a drink problem, or do you just shake your head and say, what on earth is happening to my city?
I think that Rob Ford has had problems before this had all come out. I've been following his political career since before he became mayor, and he gets into a lot of scandals. He's been getting into a lot of scandals over the years, and denies until evidence is presented. And it just comes to a point where enough is enough. So,
you're a student. When you talk to your friends on campus, your colleagues, your family, what's the general sense they give you? Have they run out of patience with your mayor?
My school, University of Toronto, has been holding rallies since before Mayor Ford became mayor. Anti-Ford rallies saying that it's going to be a problem if he gets into the mayoral chair. Now that he's here, a lot of people are very unhappy. There's only a handful of people that I know still support him at this point. Most of my friends just really would like him to step down because he's causing a lot of embarrassment to our city, and he's not representing the people of Toronto in a very good manner.
Well, Jordan, thank you for taking the time out to speak with us here on World Have Your Say. Do stay with us. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be talking about India's Mars mission.
No, I actually... Talking about it. Let me say something. No, I actually... Talking about it. Let me say something.
Welcome back to the programme. We're going to turn our attention to India now. And of course, this week saw their first Mars mission. Some people have said they actually did it on quite a shoestring. A staggering $73 million described as a shoestring, but in space terms, a relatively cheap exercise. Let me introduce you to some guests who are going to speak with us about this for the next 10 minutes or so. Pallava Bagla is science editor for NDTV and author of Destination Moon, joins us on the line from Delhi. Also joined by Radha Sharma, who is a writer in Paris. But first, let's cross to Mumbai and speak to Susmita Mohanty, who is a space entrepreneur. Susmita, great title, a space entrepreneur. It sounds hugely inspiring. Tell me what you've made this week of India's quest to reach Mars.
I think it's a fantastic mission. It's definitely taken the world a little bit by surprise, and everyone's comparing it to the upcoming Mars mission, which will cost about 10 times as much. But I think more than anything else, it's put India back on the map. Whenever it comes to Asia, we love to use the word emerging for all things Asian. So everybody likes to club India, China, and Japan as emerging space nations. But the fact is they're fairly advanced space nations. And I think the world's waking up to that fact. So I'm really enjoying the news and the coverage.
Pallava, you of course witnessed the whole event, the spectacle. Just describe it to us.
Oh, it was fantastic. On November 5th at 2:38 p.m., India's majestic polar satellite launch vehicle in its 25th mission lifted off and took India's Mangalyaan into space. The polar satellite launch vehicle is a 45-meter tall vehicle, which is equivalent to about a 15-story high building. It weighs about 320 tons, which is the weight of a fully loaded 747 Boeing jumbo jet, or equivalent to about 50 full-grown elephants. It lifts off and carries India's Mars orbiting mission into an earthbound orbit, places it precisely where it should be, and then the long journey will begin very soon. It's a hazardous mission, it's a risky mission, and India opted and joined in this, what I have described as an Asian space race between India and China at the right time.
Well, it's interesting. We'll get into that space race in a little while, but I want to bring in Radha in Paris. I wonder if you welcome this step forward by India to launch this mission to Mars.
Definitely. I think it's an extremely thrilling event for India and indeed for the whole world. And as an Indian, I'm extraordinarily proud of this achievement, and I think doing it on a shoestring budget, as you said, is tremendous. And I think our scientists really have to be congratulated for this. And I also think it's a moment that's extremely important for a nation's psyche, because apart from the scientific achievement, it's a unifying event for India. And this is a time when I think political, religious, casteist, communal divisions fall aside, and the nation sort of holds its collective breath and applauds. And so I think it's really tremendous. I'm extremely proud of it. I only have one little regret, and that is there are about maybe 200 million Indians who are actually maybe not applauding, because I feel for the Indian who is sleeping under the stars, what does he make of this race to reach the stars? I'm not sure about that. And in fact, I'm pretty sure actually that he doesn't really give a damn. So that's my reaction. But as an Indian, I'd start off by saying that I'm really proud of this achievement, and it's absolutely tremendous.
Well, Radha, it's interesting you talk about those 200 million Indians who are sleeping under the stars, who are incredibly poor, and this $73 million could have made a big difference, could it not, Susmita? Can you understand that criticism?
Yeah, but I disagree with Radha on that one, because I think not only do we need to ensure food and education and employment for our masses, but we also need to give our children a reason to dream, to dare to explore, to reach for the stars. We don't want them to just commute to work every day and do just another regular job. So I think it's going to lift their spirits and inspire them to reach out to new frontiers.
Radha, do you want to respond?
I'd like to respond to that. I didn't mean in any way to say that this mission should not have taken place, or that this 73 million could have been spent elsewhere. That wasn't my intention at all. What I was trying to say is that this event would have been even better, would be a happier event if it had been totally inclusive. If all 1.2 billion Indians could really applaud this event, then I think it would have been a really happy day for India. And it's still a happy day. I know it fires the imagination, and it's a tremendous event. As I said, apart from the tremendous scientific and technological achievement that it is, it also fires the imagination, and it unifies. And we don't have too many of these events that really get all Indians, geared up and cheering together.
Well, I just want to pull up this comment, which was written by James Fenner in the Las Vegas Guardian Express. He wrote a piece called Indian Mars Mission to Launch Amidst Overwhelming Poverty. He says some see the country's latest space endeavours as an irresponsible and profligate act, merely designed to showcase the developing country's superpower status. Pallava, do you agree that in some ways this wasn't helpful to India when there is such extreme poverty in the country?
No, I completely disagree with that argument. See, you have to see India has to walk on 2 feet. You have 1 feet which will take people out of poverty and the other which will take India into the high technology sector. I disagree with this argument that this high technology, this aspect of space technology is not helping the poor. Let me just give an example. Just a few weeks ago, there was a major cyclone. You were earlier talking of a typhoon in Philippines. There was a cyclone in the Bay of Bengal. And the number of people who died in that cyclone was about 44 or in double digits. Earlier in 1999, there was a cyclone in which 10,000 people died. Before that, there was a cyclone in 1970 in which 300,000 people died. And what is the crucial difference between then and now? India has half a dozen of its own satellites. It has its own Doppler radars which monitor the progress of the cyclone. And if 10,000 lives could be saved because of satellites and Doppler radars, I think this argument that India's poor are not being helped by Indian space program is completely infructuous. The cost which has been invested...
We discussed this issue earlier this week on the BBC World Service Radio, and lots of people in Western countries got in touch and said, why should we be donating aid to India when they can afford to spend $73 million on a space programme? We're losing jobs, we're poor, we're struggling to pay our own bills, and yet we're giving aid to a country that's spending this amount of money on a space programme.
See this aid which is often spoken about. One, India doesn't accept government-to-government aid. It is government aid which is given by the UK government to non-governmental organizations. And it's the wish of the donor to give that aid. It's not the wish of the Indian government to accept that aid. And if the UK government feels so uppity about it, I'm sure the Indian government can well afford to write off that small amount of money, which is about $30 million a year. It's not really a large amount of money which the UK government is giving as aid largely to non-governmental organizations. The Indian government was very clear after the 1998 nuclear explosions at Pokhran. No aid was expected from any government. And since then, that's been the policy.
Well, Pallava, Susmita and Radha, thank you all for joining us on World Have Your Say. If you want to join me in 2 hours' time on BBC World Service Radio, you can. We'll be talking a little bit more about Rob Ford. We'll also be talking more about the Philippines. But thank you so much for your company. I'll speak to you again next week.
Let me say something.